Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey, and as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Good to have you in today. We got a beautiful, actually, it was kind of a gloomy Monday, a little bit of an overcast, but we have a great episode planned for you guys today. A lot of topics, a lot of news. We've got a couple rumors out there, as we normally do. We're going to break down one of our older topics now that we've been talking about for the past 4 weeks. I guess we could sort of put this topic we could put it to rest finally, and we'll get into that later on. We also got some rookie play, some rookies that have now become starters, and the Patriots, they're not looking too hot right now, but we'll get into all that later on. Let's begin with our first topic of today's show. So the holdout, Josh Jacobs' holdout, is finally over. Him and the Raiders signed a 1-year, $11.8 million contract that can go up to $12 million if he hits $200,000 in incentives. Pretty big. That's not really. I mean, think about it. This holdout that the running backs had. They were defending, trying to raise the running back market.
They didn't do so well.
Most of them just caved in. Saquon, the first day of training camp, said, you know what, let me sign the exact same contract, just with like $900,000 in potential incentives. So not the best deal because they're making essentially the same money with, or at least in case they don't hit their incentives, they'll be making the same amount of money. But Josh Jacobs actually signed, I think, the highest baseline salary amongst those running backs that are looking for future contracts, or at least big contracts now. So I want to know, how important do you think it was that the Raiders finally signed their all-pro running back?
Very important. I mean, he was very important for them last year. He had 1,653 yards rushing, 12 TDs. He's only 25 years old. And, if he has another great year, which I think there's a good chance of it, and franchise him again next year, he'll get even more money, I would think. So, I get a 1-year deal. It's I feel bad for them, these running backs, because they really put themselves in harm's way. 1-year deals for them, they could easily get hurt and be done. So, I feel bad. He only got a 1-year deal, $12 million. It's not the top of the market. It's far from it. From Christian McCaffrey, right? He's the benchmark, right? What's his contract? Is 14, right?
Christian McCaffrey's making $16 million.
$16 million a year. So, he didn't get any fines for missing any camp because he didn't have a contract. He was number 24 in the 2019 draft, and I think he's a very high quality player, one of the best in the NFL. He's going to wear a new number 8.
Great.
That's what he wore in college for 2 years at Alabama. So. I think the Raiders make out pretty well here, and I hope Jacobs has another great year so that he can try to strike a better, a good deal for himself next year.
Well, Josh Jacobs was campaigning to get himself signed to a deal. He kept posting on Instagram a bunch of his, his impact on the team. For instance, one of them is percentage of team touches. He nearly had 50% of his entire team touches last season. Rushing first down leaders, he was first by a long shot. He had 93 rushing first down touches, and Nick Chubb had the second highest with 69. He had 93. So, and it also before that, I think it's the most rushing yards before turning 25. He is 7th on this list behind Hall of Famers like Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, Walter Payton, Edgerrin James, Emmitt Smith, and Barry Sanders. And also most scrimmage yards per game. He led, in Raiders history, he led the entire Raiders franchise history in most scrimmage yards per game with 98.2. So his impact, and besides, I talked about this before. Last season, he had 1,653 yards with 12 rushing touchdowns. And games where he didn't rush for 100 or more yards, they went 1 and 8. With the only win being where against the Patriots when Jacoby Myers threw the game away, or Ramondre Stevenson handed the game away, then Jacoby Myers threw it away. So that's just the impact that Josh Jacobs had just last season. He's been one of the better backs in the league. Maybe he's not one of the top backs, I would say, but he's definitely up there with production. He has multiple double-digit rushing touchdown seasons. He has multiple 1,000-yard seasons, and he's really the only reason why the Raiders, they didn't have a lot of success, but most of his success out of their 6 wins came from that guy right there, Josh Jacobs. So for the Raiders to finally sign their all-pro back, And besides, we had to take a look at the QB situation. Jimmy G is their quarterback. He can't go out and win you games consistently. Can he win you a game or two here? Maybe, probably, but if you're talking about sustained success that I'm sure the Raiders are hoping for with Jimmy Garoppolo, with the Josh McDaniels system, he functions better when things are easy for him, when he can hand the ball off to running backs like Elijah Mitchell, like CMC. When he sort of has that with the Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs isn't as good as CMC, but
I don't know about that.
I mean,
I don't know.
There's a reason why the Panthers.
They like CMC because he can throw the ball, but how often is he going to do that?
He's not going to throw. No, they like him because he can also receive the ball.
He can catch the ball. But
he's the best
Josh
receiving
Jacobs,
back, and he's one of the best rushing backs.
They don't need to throw it to him because he's ran for 1,653 yards.
Right. No, right? I understand that, but no, CMC is the best running back in the league, hands down. If you talk about all-around running backs, he's the best receiving back. I'd put him probably top 3 in just actually running the football, and that's why he's making $16 million a year. In Josh Jacobs' career, catching the ball, that has not necessarily been his forte. Now, has he been able to catch the ball? Yes, and that was actually part of his role with Derek Carr. He had the past 2 seasons, he caught at least 50 passes each of those seasons. He had 400 yards last season catching the ball. And, I think Josh Jacobs, when you talk about, production with the Raiders, I think he's one of only 3 running backs to have 300 total yards, something like that, which is incredible. 300 scrimmage yards, and that's the reason why they won the game. He had that long run, I believe it was in overtime, to win that game. So if you're talking about the Raiders here with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a limited quarterback, you need to have a good back, and the Raiders, without Josh Jacobs, didn't have that. Now imagine they went 6-11 with Derek Carr, who people like to hate, but isn't actually that bad. If you had, now you replace him with Jimmy G, if you just had, and once again, I think they had like the 21st ranked offensive line last season, you have that along with running backs. I'm bringing up the running back depth chart right now. Without Josh Jacobs, the next highest back would have been Zamir White and Amir Abdullah, and also former Patriot Brandon Bolden. You're not going to get a lot of wins with those running backs, so you have to rely on Jimmy G throwing it to Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers with a hint of Hunter Renfrow, which that may win you a couple games, but you'd rather have an all-pro back like Josh Jacobs to, make sure you at least have some rushing attack. Sort of you don't want a situation like the Bucs had last season where they couldn't run the football for the life of them. So everybody knew you got to pressure the quarterback because they aren't going to run the ball. And now the Raiders bring back their dynamic running back to add another piece to a potentially limited offense with Jimmy G as a quarterback. So, like you said, good pickup, really, really good decision in signing him. Now the question is, what are they going to do moving forward? How much do you think? Because do you think they're going to franchise tag Josh Jacobs next season, or do you think
if he has a great season, sure.
You think that they wouldn't come to a long-term deal to solidify?
They don't need to. The running backs all cave. They're happy to sign. Well, they're not happy, but they're willing to sign 1-year deals. Why would they go with a long-term deal for a position where you're at a high risk of injury?
That is a good point, and I was hoping that Josh. I mean, he was the longest one to keep his foot in the ground and say, "This is ridiculous." The running back market's suppressed.
He didn't wind up with anything better.
A little bit better. It's about $1 million more baseline salary. But I'm surprised he only had $200,000 in incentives.
I know, that's ridiculous.
I mean, that's basically like saying, okay, you just signed a 1-year, $12 million deal.
Yeah.
It is so it's not a huge change when it comes to Josh Jacobs' contract. But I mean, the running back position is one of the most replaceable positions in the NFL. I mean, we've seen that time in and time again. I mean,
but for an elite running back makes a difference, and he did for them.
I think it depends on
they
the
weren't
team.
that great a team last year, and the games that he was a star in, they won.
They went 5-3. They should have gone. Actually, all of their wins should have been.
They could have
100
wound
yards
up
or
maybe
more.
with 2 or 3 wins without him.
I mean, well, here's the thing. They should have gone 0-9 when rushing for under 100 yards. So Josh Jacobs actually would have been a monumental factor in each of their wins, because guess what? He would have rushed for 100 or more yards in each of their wins if the Patriots didn't throw that game away, which I think they probably could have won that game if it went into overtime, but instead, like I said before, Jacoby Myers threw it away. So they should have been 0-9. Yeah, literally. They should have been 0-9 when rushing for under 100 yards, but they had that one win. So technically, not all of their wins came when rushing for 100 or more yards. But Josh Jacobs is a top 3 back in the league right now. He had a phenomenal season last season. He was the best running back last season, and he proved it himself. He basically 49.9%. Yeah, 49.9% of the Raiders' touches last season. He was 50% of their entire offense.
Yeah.
So
they had to have him back.
His impact last season is unquestionable.
They got a good deal. I think they got a good deal. And
Absolutely.
the running backs didn't hang in there, and so they suffer from it. They all get 1-year deals.
So now we're going to be, we're going to see this next season. The running back, I guarantee you. And here's the thing with running backs. They don't sign 4 or 5 year deals. That just is not common. And if anything, it's very, very rare. In reality, running backs will probably sign 2-3 year deals at the very most. You're not going to see a 4 or 5 year contract, especially for a guy trying to get his second contract. So that's 4 years as a rookie. Fifth, if you're Josh Jacobs didn't get his 5th year option, they declined it. But if you're a good enough running back who got picked in the first round, you have the option of 5 years. You're not going to get signed for another 5 years. Like, that just isn't a thing because your prime for most running backs has already passed.
Yeah.
It was the first 5 years of your career.
Right.
So now we have to take a look, and Josh Jacobs may have to sign. We may see something like not on the same level necessarily, but a Zeke or a Dalvin Cook, 1-2 year deals under $10 million each year. Because that
$6-7 million.
It very well could
Zeke
be that.
got a $6 million deal. Dalvin Cook got $8 million.
And Dalvin Cook was a consistent 1,000-yard running back.
Right. So it's going to fall off a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to fall off a lot. He's probably got one more big, over $10 million contract next year, and then after that, it will probably fall off.
But that's the thing, though.
Production is fantastic.
It's not necessarily going to be a contract because it's going to be the franchise tag.
Yeah.
So while it is a 1 year deal,
next year will be.
If they, what I mean is that it would be an option because the Raiders could let him go or they could franchise tag him. It's not like saying we necessarily want you here long term. We're just saying, you know what? We don't want to pay you multiple years, tens of millions of dollars, $15 or so million a year. So we're just going to say we're going to give you this option of a 1 year deal, baseline value, no incentives, no nothing. I think it's I don't know. I think the franchise tag goes up to maybe $12 million. I don't know the exact number, but this year it was 10.09 if I'm not mistaken. So you got about $900,000 more, give or take, or about $1 million more. So he made a little bit more baseline value, but the running back market, we're probably going to talk about this next offseason as well.
I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
I don't think it is either.
But interestingly enough, most teams that go deep into the playoffs have a very good running back. Right?
I really think it depends on the team because you're talking about superstar quarterbacks. They don't need a great running back because they're good enough to carry an offense. You
don't think Kansas City had good running backs last year?
Isaiah Pacheco is not a top 5 running back, not even top 10 running back in the league. He's a 7th round pick.
He looked good in the playoffs.
He did look good in the playoffs, and some of the biggest runs were from Pacheco.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a guy, and Pacheco's a 7th round pick. He's not making any money. Nor should I think he should be expecting a lot of money because he's a 7th round pick. These first round picks, they think they should be making $14, $15, $16 million a year.
The Bills didn't have a great running back.
The Bills did not have a great running back.
They didn't go very far either.
They consistently make the playoffs.
The Bengals.
Joe Mixon's a good running back. He's a top 10 running back. The Seahawks don't have a good running back. They made the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Rams won a Super Bowl with Sony Michel and Cam Akers. They're both not great running backs. Tampa Bay won a Super Bowl with Fournette showing up when it mattered.
He was good that year.
But he wasn't this great running back throughout the year. Who else?
The Giants, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley is very good. We talk about the Vikings. They had Dalvin Cook at the time.
Dalvin Cook.
But here's the thing. Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones are not great quarterbacks. They needed that help. They needed the help from those great running backs.
The 49ers, CMC.
49ers with Christian McCaffrey and even Elijah Mitchell, who's a good running back.
And the Eagles.
Eagles do not have Miles Sanders had a great year last year. I'm not denying that. But he's not a dominant, top 5 running back in the league. He definitely helped 100%.
Yeah.
But it was Jalen Hurts and his legs that helped a lot. So, I'm starting to believe that these superstar quarterbacks, top 5, top 7, top 8 quarterbacks in the league, Lamar Jackson, he doesn't need to get superstar running backs because his running backs do enough, and he's a mobile quarterback himself. They don't need to pay a running back $15 million a year to do something that Lamar takes touches away, and that's the thing with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson may take, 50 touches or so away from, or more, away from Jonathan Taylor? So if he's asking for $16 million, he's not going to get the same production as he would on a team like the Raiders if Josh Jacobs wasn't there, or even like the Patriots if he was the running back one of the Patriots, because that's sort of more their forte. The Falcons are trying to run the ball more. So you'd get more touches there. So it really it's situational, I think, because it really depends on the offensive scheme, and I think that's why it's interesting to see how the Raiders do this season under a new quarterback and Jimmy Garoppolo.
They're going to do better with Josh Jacobs than they would without him. That's for sure.
You would at least expect that, I would say. Yeah. All right, let's get into our next topic here. So we broke the news on Friday's show that Trey Lance was traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 4th-round pick. Now, other teams actually were interested in Trey Lance, such as the Falcons, Ravens, Bills, and Lions. We just talked about running backs in those teams. Some of these teams don't necessarily need a quarterback, but they were still interested in getting Trey Lance. Now, Trey Lance was talking to the 49ers before he left, and he said that he actually requested a trade on Wednesday, and that's why, at least I thought on the Harvey Hour Fired Up, that he didn't show up to practice because he knew what was going on. He wanted to be away from the team, and I said he probably requested a trade. Well, that was true. He did request a trade because he said he wanted to have a shot at being the backup quarterback. What's funny is he's not even the backup quarterback on the team he got traded to.
Yeah.
He's behind Cooper Rush.
And he won't be. Cooper Rush got a 2-year deal.
Yeah, so it is going to be very difficult to see Trey Lance move up in the ranks, at least on that team. So I want to know, are you surprised that the Dallas Cowboys decided to trade a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance?
I will say this again, and I said it when we were talking about Mac Jones. When you're the quarterback, you've got to have supreme confidence in yourself, right? And so Dak Prescott is now the latest example of someone who's got to have supreme confidence in their own ability, because Jerry Jones just said, and with this trade, that he doesn't have supreme confidence in Dak Prescott. And he's thinking that if Dak Prescott has another year like he had this past year with 15 interceptions in 12 games, and basically being the reason why they lost the game to the 49ers 19-12 with his 2 interceptions, that he's not going to give Dak an extension, and he's going to give Trey Lance a chance. That's what he said when he said we did it because we want to bring in young talent, and we've had a hard time bringing in young talent, and this was an opportunity to do that. But if Dak Prescott is your guy and he's the franchise quarterback, then Trey Lance isn't going to get into the game. And by the way, you gave Cooper Rush a 2-year deal to keep him around, and he has a record of 4-1 as a starter. So the reason they've got Trey Lance there is they don't trust Dak Prescott. We're worried he's going to have another stinker, and they may put him in this year. They may give him a chance this year if Dak Prescott starts throwing interceptions all over the place. But definitely next year. I'd say they're really looking at him for next year. They're going to let him watch this year and learn. They say Dak Prescott is a great teacher. So I don't know how incentivized he's going to be to teach Trey Lance when he's waiting to take over his job. But, his contract's up in 2024. And if he doesn't get him at least to the NFC Championship game this year, I would say they're going to give Trey Lance a great chance to step in there and be the starter going forward.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if we'll necessarily we may see Trey Lance even this season, because in the past 3 years, Dak Prescott has only played two-thirds of the games that he could potentially play. He did have that, I believe it was a compound fracture 2 years ago, and then he was out that entire season, obviously. He came back, but basically he's played 66% of the past 3 seasons, and last season he played, I think it was 11 or 12 games, and somehow, some way, he led the league in interceptions, which that's shocking in of itself. So Dak Prescott and this Cowboys offense, when it matters most, I think Dak comes up very, very small, because like you mentioned, I'm going to bring you in here, like you mentioned, Brock Purdy didn't play well against that Cowboys defense in the playoffs. I mean, Dak literally threw the game away. He had 2 horrible interceptions, and these weren't tipped interceptions. These weren't where, it's just unfortunate. These were bad throws to players who weren't necessarily open, and he threw the game away. It was very, very bad timing that he decided to throw these interceptions. And that's why I think we may see Trey Lance actually play, because, Dak, we've seen him, he's only played in the past 3 seasons. He hasn't even played a full season. He's taken at least 1 game off for the past 3 seasons. In totality, he's missed a third of the past 3 seasons. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Trey Lance actually, if They know Cooper Rush is good, and we saw how Cooper Rush played last season. When Dak was out, he was surprisingly efficient, and we actually debated on the show whether or not that they should keep Cooper Rush in there to make sure Dak is 100% healthy and ready to go. And at the time, I think both me and you said you got to put him in at least one more. You got to let Cooper Rush play at least one more week. But they ended up they didn't and let Dak Prescott play that week where we were debating it. But we saw Cooper Rush. He played very, very well, surprisingly well. And I don't know if necessarily Jerry Jones will throw him into the fire and say, you know what, Trey Lance, we don't know what you look like. We know what Cooper Rush gives us. We'll give you a trial run. We'll throw you out instead of Cooper Rush if Dak Prescott ends up getting injured. But I think you're right about this. We need to wait at about 2 seasons from now because Dak becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2025. That'll be very interesting to see what the Cowboys do because Trey Lance, and I've said this, I feel like while it started as Trey Lance is a bad quarterback, it came, I believe my take sort of morphed into he's a bad quarterback, and I have to think that way because it was an unfortunate situation on the 49ers. Every quarterback that was with Trey Lance on that team was just slightly better or very much better than Trey Lance at that time. Jimmy G made it to an NFC championship the year that they drafted Trey Lance. Then it was his team. Then Jimmy G played well. Then Jimmy G got hurt. Brock Purdy came in, went undefeated, went healthy. And you can't do anything about that because this team for the past, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons, has been we're ready to win a Super Bowl now. They've been a Super Bowl contender since 2019 when they made the Super Bowl and were leading by 10 in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs. They've been in win now mode for years and years and years, and this team's getting older. You can't put in a project like Trey Lance, who was the rawest quarterback coming out of this draft, and say, we have our full faith in you, go win us some games, when guess what? He still will have rookie problems. He'll still make rookie mistakes because he hasn't had the snaps.
No, Brock Purdy may have that issue this second year, too. We don't know.
We have to see. And
he came out like a house of fire, 5 wins, and then he was undefeated, really, until he got hurt in the Eagles game. So it's hard to know. Whether he would have won the Super Bowl or not. He could have taken him to a win there. That game was just getting started when he got hurt.
Right.
So we don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I find it very interesting that 2 of these teams don't need a quarterback and we're still interested, and that's the Bills and the Ravens.
Yeah, why were the Bills? Why do you think the Bills were interested?
A backup quarterback for Josh Allen. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know. I don't understand that.
Actually, the Ravens make some sense.
I think the Ravens make sense.
We haven't seen Lamar play in December and January in the past 3 seasons.
That's right, and Trey Lance is a similar type quarterback.
Right, exactly.
Even a little bigger.
Yeah. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when Lamar was dealing with his contract situation, we've been talking about Trey Lance for months at this point. If I'm not mistaken, I mentioned that the Ravens, if another team makes an offer that the Ravens don't want to match, and Lamar goes to that team, to look at Trey Lance as a potential option because he fits into the same style offense, which I also think would work with the Falcons. They want to be a
I don't know why the
team.
Falcons didn't get him. I think they made a mistake.
The owner still believes in Desmond Ridder, but it's Desmond Ridder. He's not going to be a top 5 quarterback, top 10. He's not even going to be top 15, 16 in the league, at least for a number of years. So, and then the Lions,
I could have had him for a 4th-round pick.
Here's the thing.
I think that's worth the risk.
I wouldn't give it up. Because we don't know.
You wouldn't give up a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance.
He couldn't beat out Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, we both think, is a complete bust. And that's why I think killed his trade value. I said back on Wednesday.
I think it's still a small sample. It's just a couple of games out there.
It is.
And
guess what? The sample won't get any bigger.
I think
it won't get any bigger because he's the 3rd-string quarterback.
You know what?
Of the
I think he was feeling too much tension, too. I think he was feeling a lot of tension. I don't think he played as well as he could have. I still think the jury's out on this guy. He didn't play in 2020 in his final college year because of COVID.
He played 1 game, basically nothing.
Nothing. So, and he got his chance to start there, and he played the first couple games, but then he got hurt, and it was out the whole year.
Yeah.
So, and this preseason, he didn't look that great. He didn't look that great, but I don't think he expected them to bring in Darnold to be there competing with him. So, I still think the jury's out. If I were the Falcons, they may wish they'd gotten him if he winds up being a star, but it'll be a while before we'll find out with him at the Cowboys because Dak Prescott's going to get the snaps, and if he gets hurt, it's going to be Cooper Rush coming in there, not Trey Lance.
And that's the thing. Or the Cowboys have a decision to make because they're paying him $5 million next year and then a couple $100,000 this year. Are you going to give him his fifth-year option? Because if you do, that's the year that Dak would be gone.
Yeah.
That fifth year would be now. Yeah, that's the decision. If they pick up his fifth-year option, I think we could potentially be seeing Trey Lance be the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
They probably one reason they did it, send a message to Dak Prescott: don't screw up this year.
Yeah. Do you think that's also on Mike McCarthy? I mean, Jerry Jones loves Mike McCarthy. Could he be out the door this season if they don't play well?
I don't think so.
You think Mike McCarthy?
Oh, if they don't. I mean, they're probably the third best team in the NFC, don't you think? I would say the 49ers and the Eagles are ahead of them.
Correct.
Right? But they're the third best team, so they should be able to get pretty deep into the playoffs.
They've also won 12 games the past 2 seasons as well.
They should be able to get to the NFC Championship game. They should be able to get to the NFC Champion. If they do that, then Dak Prescott's okay. He's going to be around. If they don't, I think that you're going to see them give Trey Lance a really good chance.
And I agree with you because if you I'm going to bring up the roster right now. I mean, this is an insane roster. You have Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard, who was a better running back last year. He had one of the highest grades by PFF. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, who I think was a great pickup at a wide receiver too. Michael Gallup, not bad. They've one of the best offensive lines. Tyron Smith and Zach Martin are two both phenomenal offensive linemen. Then this defense. Ready for this? DeMarcus Lawrence, who's a great defensive end. Micah Parsons, one of the hottest new defensive players. Leighton Vander Esch, who I think is pretty good. Stephon Gilmore, former Patriot. Jaron Kearse, who I don't think is that bad at safety. Donovan Wilson, who's not that bad. And then Trayvon Diggs, who had, how many interceptions did he have a couple seasons ago? He had 10 or something like that?
He wasn't so great last year.
Yeah, no, it wasn't too hot, but he's still one of the better cornerbacks in the league. So this team, as it's currently constructed, in the NFC at least, should be one of the teams to at least make it to the NFC Championship game. It's a question of, do the Eagles take that step back? Do you have a sort of Super Bowl hangover potentially? And you brought this up, the sample size. It's not going to get any bigger, at least in the near future, unless Cooper Rush gets hurt and Dak Prescott gets hurt. Otherwise, the sample size is going to stay the same because he's not going to play any games. So I don't know. We're in an interesting situation with Trey Lance.
I mean, there's no preseason left.
No
That's
preseason.
over.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd say he basically watches this year. I don't see that he's going to get many chances. He isn't going to get many reps in practice, right? They don't do that much between games. So, and Dak Prescott's going to get all the first team reps. So, I don't know. If they bring him in, he's going to be real nervous again because he won't have had any. It'll be a brand new offense for him, and he won't have had any practice with it. So. It's pretty hard to succeed in that setup. But
I think there is a decent chance, though, that Dak does not play all 17 games.
No, based on the last few seasons, I can see why. He usually gets hurt.
It's just the question of, do Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones decide to put in Trey Lance over Cooper Rush? That's going to be the big question mark. Now, if they're the solidified other number one seed or they're like a certified division winner, do they then rest Dak and then, in order to give Trey Lance reps, put him over Cooper Rush? That could be a scenario where we see Trey Lance start over Cooper Rush.
I don't know. That would that might be something that upset the team. I think if they won a lot of games, they were just waiting for the playoffs to begin. I don't know.
You would keep Dak out there. I mean,
I let Cooper Rush play. I'm not sure I'd let Trey Lance play.
Maybe, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. All right, let's get into our next topic before we hit the break. So this is pretty interesting. So former GM, I believe he was the former GM of the New York Jets, Mike Tannenbaum, had a very interesting quote on ESPN's Get Up, and this is what he had to say. He said, quote, "I would be shocked if Russell Wilson was the starter for 17 games this season. The conversation that Sean Payton is having with ownership is that year one is about culture and accountability. It's Bill Parcells' approach, and he's going to see Russell Wilson as an opportunity to hold players accountable. I know the way Sean thinks. I'm just telling you, if Russell Wilson has the smallest bump in the road, he will be benched, and Sean's going to look at it as an opportunity to set the culture and the standard moving forward." Pretty heavy quote from Mike Tannenbaum. Russell Wilson could get benched, and what's interesting is we brought that up as I don't know if it was necessarily as a joke topic or as a sort of a just sort of as, satire, just, brush it off. However, I think there could potentially be an opportunity for Russell Wilson to get benched. So I don't know, what are your expectations for Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos heading into this season, now post-preseason?
Well, I think that if that's what Sean Payton wants to do, and he wants to really make a statement about culture and accountability, then that would do it, benching Russell Wilson. But it would only be if he played terrible, I would think. I think he's going to have a little wiggle room there in terms of his play. But if he played terrible, then he probably would get benched, and that would send that message. Do I think that's going to happen? No.
You don't think so?
No. Don't. I think he's going to have every chance to be successful. And I do think he'll play better than he did last year, and I do think the Broncos have a very good defense. They have, I don't know, do they have a decent running game? Who do they have?
Javonte Williams is coming back. I believe he had a torn ACL last season, but he was pretty efficient when he was in there.
So they don't. I don't think they really have that great a running game then, because somebody coming off an ACL to come back usually takes a little while to get back in the groove. So
they were the 21st ranked rushing team
and
last season.
Their offensive line couldn't have been that good. I mean,
well, that's the thing.
They didn't protect Russell Wilson very well.
We saw in the preseason even the offensive line. I'm not gonna say it was a sieve, but it was a slightly better version of a sieve, I guess. Yeah. That's still a huge problem.
So I think that. Russell Wilson he's probably thinking that, right? That if I don't play well, there's a chance I'll get benched. They'll use it as a reason to make everyone else held accountable. I don't want to put myself in that situation. Like all other quarterbacks, I have to be supremely confident in myself and my abilities, and I've shown it in the past that I can do it. I have a great coach now. I have a great offensive system that's being put in place for me. I better learn it really well. And I better go out there and do the best I can and hope that my success keeps me on the field.
You would hope that. However, we are coming off of a Russell Wilson season that was, arguably his career worst.
It was by a long shot.
Lowest touchdowns, lowest completion percentage. He had tied for the second most interceptions in his career. It wasn't good. Second lowest in yards per attempt on the pass. His QBR was the lowest by a long shot, by nearly 20 points. I mean, Russell Wilson did not look pretty. However, we were hoping that we could potentially see a better offensive line with Sean Payton, and Sean Payton is a major culture builder. We saw in the Saints. The Saints had one of the best cultures in the NFL, and that was, large part due to what Sean Payton did. Last season, he got sacked 55 times, the most in his career. His sack percentage, every time he drops back, 1 in 10 chance he was hitting the ground. That's pretty scary coming from a quarterback who is 34 years old and is a mobile quarterback. And we also heard the rumors that he was potentially struggling with Sean Payton's offense. So I think we could potentially see, and it doesn't necessarily need to be from setting an example. I mean, last season Russell Wilson was hurt. Could we see Stidham come in? And if I'm not mistaken, Stidham actually, the last preseason game, he looked pretty good. Like, it was surprising.
He had very good stats in this last preseason game.
Yeah, so, I mean, it really depends. Now, I'm sticking to my gut here, and I'm saying that once again. I don't know. I guarantee you we will not see the same terrible season from Russell Wilson that we saw last season. But can we see a bad season, a not good season? Yeah, and I think that would still technically, make me correct when I say this is more of a trend, not a blip, because I think we're not going to see Russell Wilson go back into, MVP form or near MVP form. I don't think he ever got an MVP vote, but sort of that top of the league, one of the most dominant quarterbacks in the league, over 100 passer rating and stuff like that. I don't know if we necessarily will see that, and I don't believe we will, and I'm going to stick to my gun there, because guess what? He lost one of his wide receivers to injury. The running game, we don't know what that looks like. The offensive line looks abysmal already, and it's just the preseason. Who knows if that'll, pick up the pace, heading into the regular season here. But we're going to see a Russell Wilson team that I don't necessarily know how many wins they're going to get. Let's bring up the schedule real quick. I mean, week 1 should be a win. You may go 2-0.
They better win that first game and the first 2, right? They need to win those first 2.
I agree with you there.
And they should have a good chance to win them.
I think Miami.
I think it's going to be hard at Miami. I think that's going to be a tough game for them.
The middle of the road there is brutal.
They should win the fourth game too at the Bears, right?
Probably. And then I honestly think from week 5 to maybe week 17 could be very, very difficult. If Deshaun Watson becomes even a glimpse of what he was before he went into that quarterback limbo and then, signed with the Browns and was very, very rusty last season, if he's even a glimpse of what he used to be last year on the Texans, that could be a difficult game with Nick Chubb, with Amari Cooper, with Myles Garrett in that defense. So who knows? The Vikings, I think they're still going to be pretty good. The Bills are difficult. The Packers, potentially.
It depends on how Jordan Love's playing.
How Jordan Love play. And besides, the Packers' defense is still pretty good, and you have the 1-2 punch combo of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Then you also have, we don't need to really talk about the Chiefs. The Jets should be perfectly fine. The Bills should be fine. The Texans, I think, they're going to be a bad team. You should definitely beat them with C.J. Stroud. And then you have the Chargers. You have 2 games against the Chargers. They're going to be obviously a playoff team with Justin Herbert. The Lions had one of the most high-flying offenses, surprisingly led by Jared Goff. They also have one of the better offensive lines in the league. However, their defense is abysmal. The Patriots, they always have a good defense. They always have a good defense. So we should be expecting
sometimes that
anything
defense kind of fades a little at the end of the season. So
that
week
could be
16.
a case. So no, you'll probably from week 5 to week 17 at the best case scenario.
Well, they should beat the
3
Texans.
Wins. They should be.
They should beat the Texans, right?
And I'd say at the most they get 3
I don't know.
wins.
The Lions, to me, everyone thinks they're going to be great. I still think it's a question
Including
mark.
me. I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be a playoff team.
I think they're somewhat of in my mind, a question mark because of their history.
Okay.
They have never had.
Okay.
They've never had a winning. I don't know. Maybe they've got the winning culture now. We'll see.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so let's say the first 4 games they go 3-1, and let's say they lose to the Dolphins 3-1. I'm saying from week 5 to let's say even week 18, from week 5 to week 18, if they're starting 3-1, can they win 5 more games, 6 more games? I'm not sure. The Packers I think could be interesting, but that should be a win. The Texans should be a win. You're saying the Lions could be a win. The Raiders, we don't know what they're going to look like at Raiders. Or even, what about Browns? The Browns could be another interesting team. So there's 5 wins there. So are we looking at an 8-9 season for the Broncos? Potentially. And I think that's at the best case scenario.
I think they need to really come out and win that first game. I think that's really important.
You have
I think
to set
they
the
could
tone
be
for the season.
I think they could be 3-1 after 4 games.
And then from week 5 on.
3, I think they can win against is that the Browns or what's week 12?
That's the Browns.
Browns. So there's a win. The Browns and the Texans are a win. So that's 5 wins. I say maybe the Lions is a win. That's 6. And the Raiders again at the end. That's 7.
What about the Packers?
I think it's maybe that's it. Maybe that's 8. Maybe 8 wins.
We're looking at the very best
8 wins.
8-9. 8-9. And that's coming off a season where Russell Wilson himself, because he got hurt, went 4-11.
Yeah, well, 8-9 is a lot better than 4-11.
He's going to double his win total, but in reality, the way the Broncos season actually ended up, they're improving by 3. They're improving by 3. So, I mean, in reality, I don't know necessarily how good. The situation may turn into we may see Russell Wilson benched potentially at the end of the year. Who knows? But I agree with you. They need to get, they got to get the ball rolling in game 1. Come out here and dominate.
If they're 8-9, they're probably in playoff contention until the end. So I don't.
You think they'll be in playoff contention? 8-9?
8-9. I'm saying if they're
Pittsburgh went 9-8, and they weren't even in playoff contention.
Yeah, well,
however,
think
Miami did make it though.
9-8 has gotten some teams into the playoffs.
Miami
right?
last season, yeah. But I think Miami's going to be better because they're actually going to have Tua, probably, although he is 1 concussion away.
The AFC
from ending his career.
is a tougher division than the NFC.
And you're playing in the second hardest division in football, the AFC West.
NFC teams that you're playing are pretty good, right? The Lions could be good.
Lions, Packers, Vikings.
Right? The Vikings are a playoff team last year.
And the Bears.
The Bears, so you ought to be able to beat the Bears.
Commanders as well.
The Commanders you should be able to beat.
I mean, in reality, I'm looking at probably 8-9 at the very, very best.
Yeah.
That still puts you 3rd in the division. So you're going to go up 1 place because I think the Raiders are not going to be that good of a team this season.
No, I don't know. They signed Jacobs. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo will be good for them. He has his history as a winning quarterback, right? He has a nice percentage win.
Yeah, I think he has more than double. I think he might be. I think he's 40-19 in his career.
That's pretty good.
It is pretty good. So I don't know. It's gonna be very difficult to see if I think the big thing is protection. It really is up to Russell Wilson and that offensive line to give him protection. And I don't know exactly if the Broncos are going to be able to do that, because the offensive line last season, 55 sacks. And looking at this preseason with Russell Wilson, he was getting pressured left, right, center. I mean, he was getting destroyed pressure-wise. So I don't know. But I do think a key, at least for Russell Wilson, will be that protection. Speaking of protection, though, in a world where online privacy matters more than ever, NordVPN has your back. With its military-grade encryption and lightning-fast servers, you could surf, shop, and stream without a worry. But it's not just about privacy. It's also about freedom. NordVPN allows you to connect to any one of their 5,000 servers across 60 countries. Whether you're a worldwide traveler, a content creator, or just someone who values their digital space, NordVPN is a must-have tool in your online arsenal. And guess what? NordVPN is offering an exclusive deal that provides you with top-of-the-line online safety and security for just 50 cents a day. So why wait? Don't compromise your online safety and freedom. Join the millions of people, including myself, who trust NordVPN and experience the internet the way it's meant to be, safe and open. All right, coming up, the big three of rookie QBs have all been announced as starting quarterbacks for Week 1. But who will have the better career? And also, the Patriots traded for 2 offensive tackles this weekend. Does this make them look desperate? We'll discuss that right after this.
Introducing video podcasts on Spotify.
Transform your storytelling into a show everyone can watch
or listen to.
Easily upload your video through Anchor, Spotify's free podcast creation tool.
So whether you're showing off a new recipe,
interviewing an exclusive guest,
or uncovering the next mystery,
you can now reach a whole new audience with Spotify.
Podcasting just became more than audio.
Create with Anchor, watch on Spotify.
You have a lot to say. Maybe you've thought, I should start a podcast. Meet Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast ever. It's a powerful mobile app and web tool that lets you record a podcast anywhere and distribute it everywhere. It's great whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. And it's 100% free. You can record your show straight into Anchor on your phone, iPad, or the web, using any mic you want. Record alone or with friends or co-hosts anywhere in the world. You can add background music and transitions, and your listeners can send you voice messages that you can incorporate right into your next episode. If you want to produce your show using another app, you can upload your own audio directly from web or mobile and still take advantage of Anchor's totally free podcast hosting. Once your podcast is ready to publish, Anchor can automatically distribute it to every major podcast platform. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, so your listeners can hear your show wherever they want. And on the web, you can see detailed analytics about how people are listening. Plus, you'll get a great-looking profile page where anyone can listen to your podcast or subscribe to it. And if you want to ask your audience to support your work, Anchor makes it easy to collect monthly payments from the people who love your podcast and want to see it grow. You really don't need a recording studio, expensive equipment, or a bunch of technical knowledge to deal with a podcast feed. Just get started and join the diverse community of podcasters already on Anchor. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey, and as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic here. So Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and C.J. Stroud have all been announced as Week 1 starters for their respective teams. It's pretty interesting. C.J. Stroud this past weekend was just announced that he will end up actually being the Week 1 starter for the Houston Texans. All these players got drafted in the top 4 last season. All were very, very promising in college. We saw at least the last season with Anthony Richardson. He looked like a very mobile runner, very athletic quarterback, and that's why he was probably drafted as high as he was. C.J. Stroud, dominant at Ohio State, and Bryce Young, phenomenal season with Alabama. So we have great quarterbacks within the top 4, and all of them have rightfully so, been named starting quarterbacks. So I want to know, which quarterback will have the most successful career when it's all said and done?
That's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
A very tough question. I mean, when you look back over history, quarterbacks that are ranked, that are drafted high, you have 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first 4 spots this past year, right? That doesn't happen very often. In the past, when a lot of quarterbacks taken in the first round, very few of them wind up being successful, right? You may get 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5. Doesn't happen very often. So will all 3 of these guys be world beaters? I doubt it. And based on what we've seen so far, it's too small a sample size to say how well they're going to do. I would say Bryce Young, he had the best stats, but, I mean, it's only 129 yards of passing yardage. So 1 TD. One thing he showed, he can take a hit, man. He took some vicious hits in the first preseason game there, and he's not that big a guy, and he didn't get hurt, so I give him that. He's a tough guy. Anthony Richardson is kind of in a Trey Lance mode, right? You don't know that much about him. He didn't play that much college ball, and he's got the athleticism and all that, but we don't know whether he can get out there and really do well. But I think the Colts are doing the right thing. Throw him out there and find out, right? They're going to find out early. He's going to make probably a lot of mistakes initially, but if he's really got what it takes, then they'll find out soon. They won't be waiting like the 49ers did for Trey Lance. And Stroud, I watched that first game, the Patriots game, and he was only in there. He only threw 6 passes. Oh, actually,
He threw
4 passes, right? 1 to the other team and 2 to his teammates.
Yeah.
So he was 3 for 4.
Except
one for the other team.
Mostly the team.
Yeah, he looked terrible, I thought, than that.
Yeah.
But again, you really couldn't tell too much from it. So I'd say the jury's still out. Maybe one of them winds up being a really great quarterback in their career. I'd have to say if I were going to pick one of them that I think has the best chance for that, it would have to be Bryce Young.
You're going to say Bryce Young,
Yeah.
and I think that probably is the right choice when you're talking about maybe the best quarterback at least coming out of college. I quickly showed a flash on the screen, but let's take a look at how their preseasons turned out. Bryce Young definitely had the best preseason out of all of them with 53. Here's the thing, completion percentage, I'm not taking a major look at right now because young quarterback, they're jittery. I mean, we saw C.J. Stroud. He looked like a deer in headlights against the Patriots. He was jittery, didn't know where to go with the football, and you know what? That's perfectly fine. Although, does it potentially foreshadow what it could look like, at least in his rookie year? Maybe, but once again, I agree with you. Incredibly small sample size, a micro sample size.
Yeah.
Nothing to really focus in. The passing yards, 129 for Bryce Young, a touchdown, 87 passer rating. Compared to the other top 4 quarterbacks, I mean, miles above both of them. Anthony Richardson, well, I think Anthony Richardson had his moments. We take a look at that stat line value. Ain't that great of a quarterback, at least so far in the preseason. But here's the big thing: he's the rawest quarterback coming out of this draft. And I said, I don't know if I broke it down on the show or not. But when Anthony Richardson was named the starter, it might have been the Harvey Hour fired up. I said this is the perfect thing that the Colts needed to do: throw him in the deep end, let him get the reps because he hasn't gotten a lot of reps in college. This is the exact thing the 49ers maybe should have done, but
Trey Lance.
But I'm not going to hate him for it because guess what? Jimmy G was getting them to NFC championships and Super Bowls.
Right, yeah.
So you couldn't say, yeah, you just got to an NFC championship. You're done. Like, you're not going to do that. That's not something that happens.
Yeah, I mean, and the 49ers have a great team. I mean, they have a lot of great players. You can't say that about either the Panthers, the Texans, or the Colts.
I do think out of the teams, though, the Panthers probably have the best team.
Yeah, so that's probably
although I think it's very, very close with the Colts. I think the Colts, Michael Pittman's a good, he's definitely a good wide. I think he's a good wide receiver. He was my favorite receiver coming out of, although he's not the best, I'll say that. He was my favorite coming out of that draft. Their defense is good as well. They also have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. The Panthers and the Texans can't say that about their running backs, although the Texans, I believe, have Damian Pierce, I believe his name was, a good running back last season. But you're right.
The Texans probably have the nucleus of a team that could be good in the future, right? Because they drafted who was the guy that Anderson? They drafted Will Anderson on the defensive side of the ball. So they've got a potential star on offense and a potential star on defense. They can build around those guys. I agree. I think the Panthers probably have the best team around Bryce Young of the three. I think that the Colts are doing the right thing, throwing him in there and letting him play. If they lose 12 games this year, they'll get another great pick in the draft, and they can build around the several guys. So,
Right.
So that's kind of how I feel about it.
I think it is very, very good for each of these rookie quarterbacks to get, to become starters. Now, there was a big question of, do you let Anthony Richardson sit behind Gardner Minshew for a year? There was serious discussion about that.
I wouldn't do that.
But I agree with you. I wouldn't either. Now, if it was maybe a quarterback, Aiden O'Connell probably was the best rookie quarterback in the entire preseason. He was slinging the ball for the Raiders left and right, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful. The Raiders.
The Vikings.
No, Aiden O'Connell.
Oh no, that's right. He was from the Raiders. That's
so
right. I'm sorry.
he was phenomenal. However, Jimmy G's the quarterback. Jimmy G's going to be the QB1. Even though Aiden O'Connell, out of even these top 4 picks, he was better than any of them.
Yeah.
So it's based on circumstances. They have Jimmy G, who is a solidified winner. That's unquestionable. That he has won games, and I think when it matters at least. He's made the playoffs a number of times, led the 49ers to a Super Bowl. I still think I'll go to my grave saying he outplayed Rodgers in Lambeau in the conditions where Rodgers statistically excels in Lambeau Field. I will always say that. And that's going to be the QB1. Each of these teams doesn't have that. The Houston Texans, they have Davis Mills, who they picked high a couple of years ago. They've already given up on him. The Panthers, Andy Dalton, yeah, he played okay last season, but I agree with you. Jameis Winston probably should have been in there.
Jameis Winston had a good preseason.
The last game was a little bit shaky, but he did have a very nice throw to Jimmy Graham, which we saw.
Yeah.
Great catch by Jimmy Graham, great throw by Jameis Winston. So all these teams can't say they have a solidified winner, per se, as a potential QB1 to sit behind and learn the game from. Now, Andy Dalton is a large veteran in the NFL, so if you're going based on knowledge alone, yeah, Andy Dalton's a good piece to talk to. However, could Bryce Young, is Bryce Young more talented out of the gate than Andy Dalton is right now? Maybe. So that's why you could use a mentor as a backup. That's why Brian Hoyer still gets jobs now. He's a backup piece. It's more so for knowledge and culture and veteran leadership than it is about you're hoping he comes in if you're needed to win you a football game. Yeah. That's not his job. So I think it's good, and I agree with you. Based on the numbers here, I would say Bryce Young is the best. But when it's all said and done, I think the quarterback who has the largest upside would be Anthony Richardson, just based on what his capabilities are. Now we see Shane Steichen. What he did with Jalen Hurts, what he did with Justin Herbert is phenomenal, and that's why I think, based on who they have as OCs and head coaches, I think Anthony Richardson may be in the best situation.
Yeah, he has good coaches around him.
And not only that,
Frank Reich is a good coach.
Frank Reich is a good coach, but
he was a quarterback too. Frank Reich.
Yeah. So if you're bringing in Shane Steichen, who worked with Jalen Hurts and he worked with Justin Herbert, why can't he do similar things with Anthony Richardson? And obviously we'll have to wait and see. But I do think, if we're talking about longevity here over the length of time, because I think Frank Reich, I don't know how long he has with the Panthers being their head coach. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be there a long time, because he got fired with the Colts, and it was pretty ugly. That Colts season last year was very, very ugly. DeMeco Ryans, defensive head coach, that generally does not, scream success in today's NFL. How long does he have? I'm not so sure. I think Shane Steichen right now maybe gives the Anthony Richardson the best opportunity to excel in the long run. Now, short term, it's who's the best in college, who's the most developed coming out of college. And that's generally where you get short-term success. That's why I think Bryce Young, in maybe the first 2-3 seasons, may look like the best QB out of that class this past season. But, of course, the season's coming up. We'll have to wait and see. Now let's get into the Patriots. Now, they traded for 2 offensive tackles this weekend, Tyron Wheatley Jr. from the Browns and Vidarian Lowe from the Vikings. They traded Pierre Strong for Wheatley Jr., and I believe they traded a 6th-round pick for Lowe. So I want to know, do you think trading for all these depth pieces, there may be things that they don't necessarily need, and how bad the offensive line looks, maybe they do need it, but do you think trading for these assets make the Patriots look a little bit desperate?
Well, they have linemen that are hurt, so they have to do something about that, right? They have to have enough linemen to be able to play the game, so they need to go out and get some. I don't know if they're... It's unfortunate these players are hurt, but I don't know if that makes them look desperate. I'm just a little surprised that if they need offensive linemen, why they got these 2 guys. I read about them. They're nobodies, really. Lowe had a little bit of success And look, he played a lot of snaps in the preseason, but they had some rookies that they drafted, and they didn't play. They haven't played well, but are they any worse than these two guys? I don't know. Is City So any better than or worse than Tyrone Wheatley and Verdarian Lowe? I don't know. I mean, look at these guys are just kind of bodies. I don't know whether they're going to be able to play well. They must know something about them. I mean, they must have done some kind of research, and they must have some kind of stats where they think, based on how these guys did in college and what little time they played in the preseason, they show us something that could fit in our system. Maybe that's something, but and it's hard to look across the whole league and decide who you're going to try to go get and for offensive linemen is a kind of a scarce commodity. I mean, look at how many teams have a terrible offensive line. There's quite a few of them, right?
Even with the 49ers, outside of Trent Williams, there's a lot of holes in that offensive line.
Who has a great offensive line? The Cowboys have
have a good old line. The Eagles have a good old. The Eagles, outside of Trent Williams, they probably have the best offensive line. If you take Trent Williams out, or don't make Trent Williams' greatness cascade amongst the rest because the rest of the 49ers offensive line, you take a look at it. You don't recognize a lot of those names. There are not a lot of big names there. So the Lions have a good offensive line with Penei Sewell, but in reality, in the preseason, Tyrone Wheatley. What's the one thing the Patriots actually? There's a lot of things the Patriot offensive line didn't do that great on so far this preseason. But what's the one thing they could never get going?
Pass defense.
I was thinking run block, actually.
Oh, yeah?
They could not run the ball.
Both. They couldn't do anything right.
Yeah, no. I think they were dead last in rush yards per attempt.
Oh, yeah, in the preseason?
And they were, in the preseason. And they were second to last in points scored, I believe. Or they may have been dead last. In this preseason, Tyrone Wheatley played 98 snaps. He was graded out of, 100 here by PFF, a 95.6. One of the best, if not the best, offensive tackle in at least the preseason.
98 snaps is not very many.
It's not that many. However, I don't think he's played a single game. He's
never played in the NFL.
He never started. He got drafted in 2021 with the Bears. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. That is literally just a body. The injuries you bring up. There's right now 3 starters, one of which was not on the team last season. That's Riley Reif. He's injured. Let's see if I can pronounce this guy. Michael Onwenu, the guard, the pretty good guard for the Patriots. He's dealing with an injury. Cole Strange is dealing with an injury. Calvin Anderson, who they picked up this offseason, is dealing with an injury. Connor McDermott, albeit he wasn't even that good in this offseason or this preseason, he's injured. Antonio Mafi, he's also hurt. Cody Rusi, both the past 2 guys are third stringers. They're dealing with injuries. I mean, a lot of
Trent Brown. He's out there. He played.
He was out there, but early in the preseason and the offseason, he was dealing with an injury. But, he's out there. A lot of these offensive linemen aren't even that good. So bringing guys that have barely played or that just haven't played, I think Lowe played a little bit. However, last season, he was very, very bad. He was graded a 35.1. Not very good. His run block was worse than his pass blocking. But this Patriots offensive line looks pretty bad. And to give up a previous 4th-round selection in Pierre Strong for a guy who hasn't played really at all, that's telling. And then you give up a 6th-round pick for a guy who wasn't even that good.
Well, the Patriots are going nowhere if they haven't got an offensive line that's at least a little better than they had last year, right? In the Brady years, they had a very good offensive line.
Correct.
Always had good offensive linemen. And that's something that's been a problem here for the last couple of years.
It has been, and I know it's been a glaring problem. And even in this preseason, it was a massive problem, and that's why they benched Mac Jones for the final preseason game. The offensive line was so bad they didn't want to. They didn't want to, have risk it for Mac Jones to get hurt in the preseason. I was hoping to see Mac Jones because guess what? He's on the hottest seat in that entire Patriots organization, even hotter than Bill Belichick. And somehow
he didn't play at all.
They didn't play him because of how bad that offensive line is and how injury-riddled that offensive line is.
They're going to have to put him out there against a very stiff competition in the Eagles.
Yeah, I would say so.
Their defensive line is very good.
Let's look at the front sevens here. If the offensive line's that bad, look at the teams they have to play.
I know. It's going to be very hard.
Up until week 9, they're playing teams that are very, very good on defense or have gotten better. The Dolphins, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey have gotten better. The Eagles, they were about to break the record for most sacks in totality of a season, including the playoffs. The Jets, they had the number 4 defense last season, and they looked dominant against the Giants. What was it, yesterday or Saturday? The Cowboys, they've had a top 3 defense a number of years. The Saints, they did lose a lot of defensive pieces, but they still have Cam Jordan, and we know, and I'm not saying Cam Jordan is at the same level of an Aaron Donald, but we saw what Aaron Donald alone can potentially do to an entire defense. He can get to your quarterback, and even if there's just pressure that could screw things up, one player, Cam Jordan, I think, is one of the top rushers in the league. Max Crosby, Chandler Jones on the Raiders. I mean, do I have to say any more? The Buffalo Bills, Von Miller's going to be back, and we saw in week 1 what Von Miller did to the Rams. And throughout the rest of that season before he got hurt, he looked dominant. Once again, then you play the Dolphins again in week 8. I mean, even depends on how Chase Young looks, the former 2nd overall pick for the Commanders. Same sort of premise there. One guy can maybe get to your quarterback enough that he maybe starts seeing some ghosts here and there. And Mac Jones, at least I've been told, he has poor pocket presence. So if you have a quarterback with poor pocket presence and a bad offensive line, that is literally a recipe for disaster.
I'm worried about the Patriots.
The offensive line is.
I'm a diehard fan. I pick them generally from the heart instead of the head, but this right now it doesn't look good for them, I must say.
And their schedule is pretty difficult.
It's a very hard schedule.
So I mean,
it's not fair that they have such a hard schedule. They didn't make the playoffs last year. You usually get a little bit of a break in your schedule,
right?
And they didn't get it. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know, the Patriots right now. There is a lot of worry because you also play against also some defenses. I'll bring it up one more time, like the Chargers. The Chargers are, could we see the resurgence of Khalil Mack again?
Eagles.
The Eagles, yeah.
The Bills twice.
Yeah, the Bills twice.
Right. The Bills. The Jets have a good defense. The Cowboys have a good defense.
Right.
Right.
I mean, even the Giants have a good defensive front.
Defensive
front. Dexter Lawrence and Williams.
The Steelers will have a good defense. Kansas City has a decent defense.
Chris Jones is trying to get a massive contract. He's holding out right now. We could potentially see the best player on that defense not play the season. And he outwardly said he's willing to sit out and take the fines.
Wow.
So we could potentially see the best player on that Chiefs defense not be there. The Broncos have a pretty good defense. The Chargers, like I said, they have Asante Samuel Jr. They have Derwin James. They have former Patriot J.C. Jackson. They have Khalil Mack. They have Joey Bosa. I mean, they have a good defense that they didn't show up last season.
They didn't show it last season.
The Bills and the Jets again. That's what I'm going to say. The Giants, you're going to be surprised how good that defense is. I think that defensive front is good. I think cornerback and they just added Isaiah Simmons, who we saw in the preseason game against the Jets. I think one of the first plays he was out there, he was like a free blitzer on the outside, got straight to Rodgers, forced him into a pretty ugly incompletion. So adding that piece, who I believe he was a high first round pick. The Giants got him for a 7th round pick from the Cardinals. I mean, I don't know. The Giants, I think, are going to be good, at least defensively. Offensively, it's still a big question mark, but that is, they are trending up, I would definitely say. So that 7.5, over-under win share total, I don't know. It's looking more so like it could be 7 to 8 wins. Yeah. Not much better. Really not much better. But, they don't have Dante Scarnecchia anymore. They're offensive line guru coach. Yeah. They brought in somebody new. Belichick will get the defense up, but we could see. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm not an insider for the Patriots. We're not insiders for the Patriots. Just based on the moves that they've made, not getting a top tier wide receiver as this breakaway target that Mac Jones could just rely on. They're going to go old school defense and running.
Maybe the rookies will step up.
And here's the thing. They got. By the way, they got rid of Trace McSorley. It looks like they're going to keep both Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas, which I think that's a great idea to do. And then they're going to move more pieces around. But, of course, that could completely change tomorrow if they decide to. But I think they should keep 6 wide receivers just for depth. Give teams very hard tape to watch.
Parker generally gets hurt. So.
That is well. Parker gets hurt. So we'll have to wait and see. But, it'll be interesting to see how the season goes out. I mean, we're 2 weeks away, basically, from the huge jump of the NFL season. Actually, when it comes to Thursday, we'll be exactly, I believe, 1 week away on the dot. So, I mean, NFL season's approaching very, very fast. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch. I'm going to be excited to see how the Patriots do and how a bunch of these teams do.
So am I.
Now, obviously, I know you like the Red Sox. We talk about the Red Sox. Now, this was not planned per se. We did go over the time, at least your time of an hour. But I decided you kept telling me let's talk about some Red Sox. So let's talk about the Red Sox.
What's the score?
Right now, it's 2-0 Red Sox.
All right.
So they just came off of a 2-1 series deficit to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
That one I give them a break on.
Mookie
The Dodgers
Betts
probably
hit his
the best team in the league.
I don't know about that.
Maybe the
Up there.
Braves are a
He's
little
up there.
better, but they're right up there.
Well, here's the thing.
Right up there. They got
Mookie
some
Betts
good
hit his
players.
first home run since
They
February
got two
2020
players that could be
in
MVPs.
Fenway. That is true.
Mookie Betts killed him.
Mookie Betts hit his first home
He's
run
really
in
the
Fenway
reason
since
they won the
2020.
game yesterday.
Yeah, so
Yeah, he had a 2-run homer, and that was pretty much the difference.
they're
After he hit
currently
that.
4.5 games behind in the AL wildcard race, and as of right now, they
They have a good chance right here against Houston. If they could sweep Houston, right, they'd move right up there.
Because they needed to win 2 of these games to make it at least interesting. And right now, I'm going to bring up the standings for us right now.
They really need to sweep Houston.
Houston has that last wild card spot. Now, if they sweep, and this is the 3 or 4 game series.
It'd still be 1.5 back, right?
This is the 3 game series then.
Yeah.
So then, they'd be 1.5 back if they do get
That's
swept.
where they need to be. I think their games are running out now. They really need to make the statement here. They missed their chance against Toronto. Toronto swept them at home.
Right.
So they really need to make a statement here.
Well, here's where we could have a shock in the MLB, at least in the AL. The Rangers have fallen apart completely, and the Seattle Mariners are the hottest team in baseball. The Seattle Mariners went from being several games behind the Rangers to now being
maybe
first
Texas
place.
is going to fall out of it.
Texas, in their past 10 games, is 1-9.
Yeah,
They've fallen off a
Red
cliff.
Sox have Texas, I think, before the end of the season.
I believe they
right?
do. Yeah,
3 games.
So there's potentially where
There's
they
a
fall.
team.
Houston may fall. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How
I think they have
that'll work
7
out, but-
games against Baltimore. That's going to be
Do we have another score update?
not so good.
We could 2-1.
Ah,
Was it Jose Abreu just homered?
oh,
So it's 2-1 right now. I don't know. We're slowly watching the slip of the Red Sox and Chris Sale's on the mound. So, and what did I tell you about Chris Sale? The last game, he plays a couple of games and they're pretty good. Then it's weird. Once he settles in, that's where he drops off. I don't know what it is, but we could be seeing that once again happen this
gets
season.
up the home run ball.
So there we go. It'll be interesting to see how the Red Sox do. Not looking too good. The Yankees have fallen apart completely.
I don't say the Red Sox aren't looking too good. They've won 10 out of the last 16 games.
At least it could be that.
10 out of the last
They're
16.
trending
That's not
downward.
so
At
bad.
least they're trending
No,
down.
they're trending
No,
downward.
they're doing what you just
They
said.
didn't
They've
do well.
ups
They
and downs.
didn't well against the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are a great team, and they were competitive against them. So
Early in each of those games, they were competitive, and then the Dodgers just separated late in that game.
no, in the second game, the Red Sox were behind. They came back and won.
Okay, what about the third one? And what even about the
third
first one too?
the third one, they
were winning.
Mookie Betts is what got them in that third game.
Would have been good to have him, don't you think? Still in the Red Sox.
I think that, hindsight's 2020, but maybe they should have given the contract to Mookie and not to Devers.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I think that does wrap up today's episode of the Harvey Hour. This was the last Monday show that we will be having for about, I want to say 5 or 6 months. So next week, we do have a Friday show this week. Next week, we open up the floodgates to a bunch of our NFL topics. I make my top 10 quarterbacks, my Nate's Notches, which is my team tier list. Like I said, top 10 quarterbacks, my one of 2 remaining standings predictions. You make your one of your 2 standings predictions. We got a massive episode, and I believe, a little spoiler, we might be planning a 2-hour start of the NFL season special. We'll have to talk that out. That very well may be the 2-hour special. We'll have to figure it out. But next week, we will not have a Monday show. We're having a Tuesday show. That starts up every Tuesday and Friday now. We will be having the Harvey Hour. Friday, we're having our show. Friday is the 99th episode of Season 3 of the Harvey Hour. Season 4 kicks off next Friday after the first official game of the NFL season, Lions-Chiefs. We'll talk about that. We're bringing back the Harvey Hot Hand as well on Friday. We bring back our our game pick predictions each week. I don't know, Monday, or at least, sorry, next Tuesday is going to be a massive, massive show, as well as Friday will be. The NFL season brings a lot of dominance for the show, a lot of great topics, a lot of long topics, a lot of important topics and breaking news. So make sure you guys tune in. But for this episode, my name's Nathan. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We are the Harvey Hour, co-host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Hi, Grandpa.
Introducing video podcasts on Spotify
Transform your storytelling into a show everyone can watch
or listen to.
Easily upload your video through Anchor, Spotify's free podcast creation tool.
So whether you're showing off a new recipe
Interviewing an exclusive guest,
or uncovering the next mystery,
you can now reach a whole new audience with Spotify.
podcasting just became more than audio.
Create with Anchor, watch on Spotify.